what may businesses have overlooked in the rush to go digital or agile that might need to be revisited once they have time and resource, as well as a little bit more certainty about what's happening in the future? And Alex, have you got any thoughts on this from a data perspective?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, actually. Obviously, the most sort of rapid digital transformation for lots of businesses that we've seen, both in terms of workforce and sort of customer-facing side of the business. So some aspects have been relatively well publicised and are quite well understood. So additional information security risk, for example, moving a whole workforce into full-time working from home. Businesses have generally been quite alive to this, but have had to take decisions, risk-based decisions, that maybe they wouldn't have done in normal times. So there's a big sort of mop-up of information security issues. So things such as, people being able to print from home, they've got access to confidential waste removal, using portable storage devices, the sort of blur between personal use and work use that we've probably seen a lot more of. What information security risks that pose? So that's relatively well understood, but that will definitely, for most businesses, need revisiting. Similarly, alongside that, any sort of compliance or framework documents, so policies or documented processes, do they still work in the new environment? Are they still appropriate? Do they need redrafting or some work to them to reflect the new world that we're living in? Then there are more sort of, discrete issues. So are you going to be doing any health monitoring of staff when they return to the office or visitors? What might that look like? Are you taking temperatures at the door? Are you asking people to self-monitor? And the data issues that go with that. So everyone sort of took a very collaborative and open approach, is what we've seen so far. How long do you want that sort of process of monitoring to continue, and how are you going to justify that from a data perspective, and what safeguards we need to put into place? And it will look quite different for employees than perhaps for visitors, or if you've got contractors working on site, what different approaches you need to take then. And then the big picture, I think, for lots of businesses, which is a more positive sort of thing to look at really, is data strategy. So if you've suddenly moved your business online, whether that's through a traditional website, or you've got an app, or you've started interacting with consumers on social channels, what does that look like in the future? Are you going to continue that? Are you going to have a hybrid business model? And you're going to want to maximise opportunity, but also to mitigate risk. You're going to want a data strategy, and you probably did not give that any airtime at the point of just entering survival mode. But now, looking to the future, what does that look like?
Okay, that's really interesting.
On the tech side, some of that obviously overlaps with the tech side. What have you seen, and what do you expect to see?
Yeah, well, I think picking up the point you just raised around the immediate survival point in time when people this hit, everybody moved to a lockdown mode of working. I think we're seeing businesses now perhaps come to the end of that as lockdown from the government perspective is easing, and from us having a bit more liberty in terms of what we do socially, but also for work wise. So whereas businesses originally thought about how do we keep those communications going? How do we keep people linked and communicating to each other through the various different networks that we've all used and applications we've used, so the Zooms, the Hangouts, the Teams, the various other ones that you can name. That was very much the immediate thought. How do we keep people connected? What we're now seeing, and what I think businesses need to be focusing on, is how do we then approach the next stage? So this return to work is I think stage 2, and then ultimately the reimagining of what work might look like going forward. And I think there's a couple of 2 or 3 factors that play into those thought processes. The first one is, are the business models that we have in place as organisations, are they true, and do they work for the new future? How do our employees now want to work? So if we're looking at a hybrid of remote plus office based, or are we looking at a predominantly virtual space in which people are working? Do our business models and does our tech estate work for that going forward? So I think what we're seeing is people wanting to look at that and needing to look at that and saying, actually, what we've got now, what we've gone into lockdown with, is that suitable? Is that good enough for where we need to be, given all these other factors? And then if you look at the customer side of it, what does the supply chain look like? What does this look like from both the people that we're trying to sell our goods and services and products to, and what does it look like from our suppliers and how we interact with those? And does our technology backbone work in that new environment? So I think, you know, all of those factors kind of play into a number of key questions that businesses, I think, need to be looking at from a tech perspective. One of which is, are our current tech partners right for our new models? So do they do what we need them to do going forward? So you mentioned a minute ago health monitoring and monitoring people as and when they come into the office, and maintaining social distance to try and mitigate some of the risks of people passing on COVID-19 when they're back in the office. So do we have the applications that enable people to book office space so they know, if perhaps before they were working in an agile environment, does that need to be a bit more rigid, and do people need to book specific desks that are 2 meters, 1 meter, whatever happens to be in the future, apart from each other? Do we need to invest in gateway solutions like you were mentioning about temperature monitoring as and when you come into the office? Do they have anything that enables us to do that and capture that information? So that's the first thing. Are our partners right for what we're planning to do going forward? I think the other couple of areas are how have the partners that we have perhaps been with for 2, 3, 4 years, so our key technology infrastructure, how have they performed? So have they given us the support that we've needed over the last few weeks, few months? Yeah. And do we see them as long-term partners because of that? And that's not really a tech issue. That's more about how much can you trust the people that you've been working with in a state of emergency? And then lastly, is there anything that we need to be thinking of about how we want to do business going forward that isn't necessarily around the pandemic itself, but have we thought about the way in which we want to incentivize workers, how we want to monitor performance and profitability, how we want to make sure that mental health is in the right place? So are there other tangential things that we need to be thinking about going forward, and what does that look like? Yeah. So I think those are the key things that I think we need to be thinking about.
Foot Anstey, powering your ambition.